Hello, my name is Pi Lanningham with Sundae Labs, and I'm here to provide an overview of the Treasury Oversight management mechanism that we've built. The goal of this mechanism is to provide increased oversight, accountability, and transparency to this year's Treasury spending. It does that through three main mechanisms. First is a set of smart contracts. I've talked a lot about these smart contracts in the past, but I'll give a quick overview of them again. Second is a metadata standard that is SIP 100 compliant, so that everybody can follow along with, audit, and display and introspect on how these funds are used and spent. And third is actually two user interfaces, one built by Sundae Labs that I'll give a demo of, and one built by Cerberus that I'll let them give a demo of in another venue. So first, let's talk about the smart contracts. These smart contracts basically are a set of contracts that control how the funds withdrawn from the Cardano treasury are used. They operate similarly to a multisig, except that they let Intersect place different restrictions on how the funds are used, depending on what is being done with them. So in the happy path, for the most part, they can administer and distribute funds on a vesting schedule to the many different vendors that are going to participate. But in rare cases, they can disperse funds to an arbitrary destination, for example, purchasing stablecoins, paying a vendor that through a third-party intermediary that can only accept fiat, that isn't allowed to accept stablecoin, or even paying, if we add a new feature to these contracts, we can pay into and upgrade those to a new set of contracts. And each of these actions is permissioned differently. At the end, so after some expiration date, all of the funds that haven't been spent yet or that are disputed, and we'll talk about what that means in a second, in the vendor contract can flow back to the Cardano treasury. And then the DREPs can authorize those funds to be spent in a different way. The real world isn't always that clean though, and so we provide the ability, for example, if there's a dispute over whether some work was done or the wrong file was attached and uploaded, we can pause these payouts until that dispute is resolved, and then they can be resumed again and the vendor can withdraw as normal. And then in extreme cases, say the vendor is going out of business and won't be able to complete the work, or the vendor and the oversight committee agree that the scope has changed and it doesn't make sense to build a bunch of features that nobody needs. With agreement from both of these parties, the project can be either modified or even completely canceled. And so overall, these smart contracts enable basically a more flexible and nuanced control over how those funds are used and spent. The second main component is a metadata standard. I'll go ahead and make this text a little bit bigger. This is metadata that's been attached to a transaction that describes funding a new project. So we can give it human readable labels. We can specify who the vendor is, either their address or in particular a human readable label. We can tie the project back to like a project number for some internal tracking mechanisms. We can give a set of milestones with different acceptance criteria and like public human readable descriptions. Things like that. And so this standard of metadata allows anybody who's browsing the blockchain, first of all, to see and read this data. It's in JSON, but it's mostly human readable. Somebody can look at this and kind of generally get an idea of what's going on. But it also allows folks like Cerberus or CExplorer or Cardano Scan or GovTools to build their own views into this data so that we have kind of a decentralized and fully transparent and auditable view over how these treasury funds are being spent. Finally, Sundae Labs is building a user interface that allows these vendors and this oversight committee to interact with the smart contracts. Now, anybody will be able to visit this portal and navigate the data, but only, the audience isn't really the general public. It's mostly for, like I said, those vendors and the members of the oversight committee that are actually going to be building and signing transactions. Cerberus is building a complementary dashboard that the audience is more for the general public, and it's more about that transparency over how the funds are used. So I can click into these different instances. Each instance is a different configuration of the smart contracts with a different set of permissions, maybe a different expiration date. This year, we only expect to really have one for all the 39 different treasury withdrawals, just to simplify management. But in the future, you could imagine like the oversight committee for open source funds being different from the oversight committee for marketing funds. or even different projects like the Amaru Treasury withdrawal being surfaced through this same dashboard. And so here we list out a bunch of different contracts that are associated with this instance. So I'll go here, for example, we've got build a bridge and pave the road. You can see a label that's been attached for this vendor. So Acme Inc. or Roadrunner Inc. A total budget that's been allocated to this project, in this case 200 ADA and then 975 ADA, and then kind of some summary details about what the status of that project is. Down here at the bottom, you can see the total budget of funds that have been received by this instance, how much has been allocated to projects. So this 1175 is the sum of this 975 and this 200, and then how much is remaining to be allocated to other projects. And then you can see the members of this instance, which is basically anybody who has some kind of permissions in this instance. And these can be either addresses or even labels. So for example, here you see we've labeled this one, a quote unquote primary Sundae wallet. All of this, I should say, is just testing data in the preview environment. Now, if I click into one of these projects, you can see an overview of the milestones, which ones are ready to withdraw, and which ones unlock in the near future. You can expand each of these to see kind of descriptions of the milestone criteria. And we're still iterating with Intersect on exactly what metadata should appear here. So that's pretty much all I can do without a wallet connected. So I'm going to go ahead and connect a preview wallet. So here I'm just connecting Eternal, which is a SIP30 wallet. Any SIP30 wallet will be supported. And then we're taken to a dashboard. So on this dashboard, I can see all of the instances that I have permissions on. In this case, this wallet has permissions on all 3 instances. I can see kind of a summary of all of the reserves across all of those instances. And then I can see any action items that are waiting for my signature. We'll come back to that in a little bit. If I click into one of these instances, it's the same view as before, except now you can see I can create a project. So I'll go ahead and do that now. And I'll create a demo video project. This is a human readable title. I can enter in a project ID. So this can be used to tie it back to, for example, Intersect's internal accounting, a project number or cost center, or however you want to kind of tie it back to that actual physical contract. So PO123. I can enter in a description. So this project was created while recording a demo video. We're working with Intersect to refine what this list of metadata is, and the standard has been designed in a way that can be evolved over time. So now for the vendor address, I'm just going to go ahead and put this same wallet address. And if there were other currencies or other funds managed by this instance, for example, maybe we converted some of the ADA to stablecoin, you could select that from the dropdown here. And then we're going to add a number of milestones. So maybe 10 ADA is going to unlock on July 12th, finish this week's deliverables. I can add another milestone. We automatically project out, because most of these are going to be monthly payments, the same amount and the same unlock date, and then you can fill in a new milestone criteria. So finish the August deliverables. And then maybe let's do like a big bonus payout at the end of August for finishing the project. Finish the project for a small bonus. Then I can review these contract details. I can see, the description, the vendor. I can see each of these milestones, make sure that it's all correct. One thing we haven't added yet, but which we do plan to add to kind of aid in the data entry here, is the ability to save this as a draft and then let other coworkers potentially work on it. Maybe you've entered all this and you want to get kind of final sign off from a manager internal to Intersect, or you just want to double check it with a coworker. You can do that before you come back, then, maybe a day later, and you click sign and submit. So let's go ahead and just sign and submit here. This is going to go ahead and build the transaction and prompt me for a signature. So I can go ahead and review this transaction. I can see that it's paying some amount of ADA into this smart contract. I can make sure, okay, 120 ADA, that adds up to what my milestones were, et cetera, et cetera. And then I can go ahead and provide my signature and submit it. And I've successfully signed that. Now I can go to my pending transactions. So this is a list of all the transactions that have expired without a signature, those that have made it on chain because everybody signed, and those that are still waiting for some people to sign. So if I view details here, we can see that we have a generic description here up top. This is specific to the type of transaction that's being submitted. So in this case, it's a fund, so it's showing you the payment schedule of that contract is creating. It shows you when this transaction expired and when it has to receive all of its signatures by. In preview, this is 6 hours, but in mainnet, this will be 36 hours. And then down here, we have a generic view for any that will show all of the inputs and outputs for any transaction. And then, if you're like me and you're still paranoid, you can actually download the raw bytes of the transaction and import that into any other transaction viewer or tool that you're already familiar with. In this case, I've already signed this, but we also allow you to view who the signatories are. And I'm going to go ahead real quick because I created this in Intersect Committee A, which this is the only wallet that has signatory permissions there. But I'll go ahead and create another one real quick in another instance where I do have multiple wallets that can sign for this transaction. Okay, so I've gone ahead and recreated this project under another instance. And now I'm going to go ahead and switch my wallet. So I'm going to disconnect here, and I'm going to connect a different wallet, and then go ahead and connect Eternal. And you can see here on this dashboard, over here in the action items is a list of everything that's waiting my signature. This makes it super easy to find what it is that you need to sign. So I'm going to go ahead and click into that. And then I can review the transaction carefully. I can download the raw bytes. If this is an air-gapped wallet or something that's offline, I can upload my transaction witness separately or generated through the Cardano CLI or whatever tools I'm using. Or if this is a SIP30 wallet, I can just go ahead and confirm and sign. Sign and submit. There we go. Now this has been signed by both of these wallets. And now for the third wallet, I'm actually going to show you an interesting feature. So if I disconnect this and I grab that address from that third wallet, maybe this is an air-gapped wallet where I don't have any SIP30 connection. We've actually added this read-only mode where I can paste in a wallet address and connect that wallet. Obviously, I won't be able to produce a signature from this wallet, but I can browse this page just the same way as always. And when I go to review this transaction, I can download those raw bytes and upload a witness just like normal. Actually, this is a small bug we need to fix. This button shouldn't be showing up, but you get the idea. And so with that, I would be able to, if this was, like I said, an air-gapped wallet or something that was offline for whatever reason, but I could still produce a signature for, then I can still go ahead and download those bytes and upload that witness. And we can practice the maximum kind of key security that we can. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this back because this actually is an Eternal wallet. So I will make this the DApp wallet. I will disconnect and connect Eternal so I can provide a signature. And then I'm going to submit that. And now, because this transaction actually has all of its signatures, anybody could come along and submit this transaction. I'm not going to do that now because there's still one last remaining bug that we're working out, but you get the idea. Finally, when I connect this wallet, which is the vendor that's receiving these payments, one of these has matured, and so I can go ahead and withdraw all available payments. Again, I'm not going to do that right now because there's one small bug that we're working out there, but we have confirmed that works. So if I go here to this project that I was showing earlier, several of the milestones were withdrawn here, and we've got the metadata attached here. So now where are we in terms of progress? So from a smart contract standpoint, the contracts are complete. They have a extensive battery of unit tests. They've been tested end-to-end in preview, SanchoNet, and mainnet. And we're getting ready to, or they've been used in the Amaru Treasury withdrawal, and we're getting ready to do the actual governance withdrawal actions. So Cardano, or the Treasury contracts, are fully complete, audited by 2 independent firms. Everything that needs to be done for those is done. In terms of the metadata standard, that is also finished, a version 1 that has been shared with kind of the relevant teams. And it's also been written in a way that we can modify and extend it as we get kind of real world user feedback about what data we want to be tracking and as we find things that are slightly awkward. So that is also fully complete. This dashboard, this UI dashboard, everything is complete for the purposes of the Treasury withdrawal. So all of the main actions we need to do to load in the instance, to index all the transactions, and to submit a dispersal, which is what we're going to test before we do the Treasury withdrawal, all of that is complete. Also, all of what is needed in the first couple of days after that Treasury withdrawal goes live is complete. So we can, as you saw, fund projects. We're mostly done with withdrawing as a vendor and submitting transactions and all that. Just a few small things to work out that we'll have plenty of time between when the governance proposal gets submitted and when this goes live for us to do that. We need to deploy this UI to mainnet. All of this has been on preview. That should be pretty simple. It's just a matter of spinning up the servers that run this infrastructure. And then finally, we need to implement pause and resume. We've put those off for now just because it's unlikely they'll be needed immediately or even in between now and when the Treasury withdrawal is submitted. But we are going to complete those before they're needed so that they can be ready. But we focused on other things so that the Treasury withdrawal could be completed. We also have a small amount of developer work budgeted for fixing kind of user UX concerns that Intersect raises as they actually use the platform, because that's a really critical part. It's really a bad idea to build a piece of software in a vacuum. You want to get users using it and then let that shape what you build. And so we've left some buffer room in there to make tweaks. So for example, I know one thing they're probably going to ask for is an email notification when there's a new action item for you to sign, and probably a vendor dashboard where you can see all of the projects that you are a vendor for and a summary of these are waiting. You can claim the funds. These ones you need to submit your milestone evidence for, things like that. So overall, we've completely de-risked the UI platform, but there's still a small amount of work to be done that can be done between now and when the Treasury withdrawal actually kicks into gear after the DREPs have voted on it. So hopefully that overview was pretty comprehensive and illuminating and answers all your questions. But as always, feel free to reach out to me if you have additional questions or concerns or suggestions. Always happy to receive that kind of feedback. Thank you.